Okay, this is the first time I've ever done a roadmap to success in my car, but I forgot to film it at the end of the session. So this is the roadmap to success for Pip. Pip has a couple of roommates, Shrek and Fiona, but really primarily we just work with with Pip. So let's talk about things that I want the Guardians to work on. First of all, Pip really didn't have any rules, and if a dog doesn't have any rules, then it's real easy for them to get the impression that they're peers with their humans. In addition to that, Pip also nudges the humans when she wants attention. And when that happens consistently, after a while, that can tell the dog, I'm not just equal to my humans, I'm superior to my humans. And if that's the case, then the dog can sometimes feel responsible for humans, and that I've seen in many instances cause the dog to actually feel like it needs to be protective or possessive of the humans and can increase their reactivity. So what we want to make sure we do is we want to drive safely, of course. Always check your mirrors. Incorporate some rules and boundaries and consistently enforce them. Remember, you have to reward or correct your dog within 3 seconds for them to make the connection to whatever is going on. Also, something that most people don't realize is dogs don't generalize very well. So when you're teaching your dog to do something, you want to teach them how to do it in 40 or more different locations. If you always train your dog to stay and you're sitting in a chair and doing it in the same place over and over again, the dog can stay great there, but you take them to a different location and they're unaccustomed to it because they haven't generalized the concept. So we're going to get into rules here in a second, but if you are training your dog, make sure that you're doing it in multiple different locations and times of day and with different distractions. Okay, so rules that we want to incorporate. Rule number 1 is no furniture, because the higher a dog sits, the more rank or status they have. I would say no furniture for a minimum of 30 days. After 30 days, furniture with permission if the dog's behavior is improved. If it is not improved, we need to maintain no furniture until the dog is displaying the behavior that we want consistently. Other rules that I suggested were to be the dog has to sit before we let it in or out of the door, not allowing the dog to be within 7 feet of any humans who are eating. So those are some examples of rules. Other things you want to do is look for ways to delay gratification for your dog. This is, some people refer to this as training your dog without using treats. So what you do is something your dog wants to do, you place that after asking it to do something for a bit of structure. For example, sitting at the door is an example of this. Well, sitting at the door is not an example of this. The next step, which if you go to my website and search for Barney, there is a pit bull I worked with where I just did a video about this, where what we do is we put the dog in a sit at the door and then we reach for the door. And if the dog gets up, we stop, ask it to sit. Basically, we train it to stay at the door even though the door is open. And then we basically don't allow the dog out unless it hears the release word to go through the door. This way, there's nothing blocking the dog between leaving the door's open, and the dog is only staying in place because of its self-control and discipline. And this is a great skill set for any dog to learn, especially a herding breed like Pip. So let me see, in addition to the rules and structure, I also went over some exercises or some techniques that Guardians can use. One of the techniques is what I like to call petting with a purpose. And that's basically asking the dog to sit before you pet it. When you pet your dog, make sure, whenever possible, try to pet them under the chin, because a proud dog has its nose in the air and an insecure dog has its head down. Petting on top of the head creates a down orientation. So when the dog sits, the dog comes up and nudges me, tell me to sit. I don't do anything. I tell it to sit. The dog nudges me asking for attention, but I don't respond to that. I instead tell the dog to sit. When it sits, I pet it within that 3-second window under its chin, and I say the word sit, and that's it. After a while, the dog will start sitting in front of you to prepay for their attention by giving you a sit. Now, if you want to pet the dog, even though the dog's not asking, you just ask the dog to sit, because it's literally the least you can ask your dog to do. And the more you practice asking your dog to sit, like I talked about earlier, we're going to practice in different locations, different times, different contexts, and that helps the dog generalize the command or the skill. Other things I went over with passive training, which is kind of an offshoot of that, which is basically petting the dog anytime it does a desired action or behavior. So if you're sitting on the couch and Pip comes over and just comes over to you, you can pet it and say, here. If you're sitting on the couch, the dog comes over and lays down on the floor next to you, pet it and say the word chill, or whatever your command word is to lay down. The more that we reward these desired actions and behaviors, the more the dog will begin to display them not only on demand, but also as a way of asking you for attention. Let's see, what other things did we go over? We went over on the escalating consequences that I use to disagree with unwanted actions and behaviors. So the first one is to hiss. Second thing is to stand up abruptly and turn to face the dog. As soon as the dog is stationary, take a step backwards. Third thing is to march at the dog with intent until the dog turns sideways to you. As soon as you turn sideways, you stop. Then you go to the second consequence, pivot until the dog is stationary, and then you can go back to doing what you're doing. And the third consequence, or the fourth consequence, excuse me, is to put the dog on a leash and give it a leash timeout. Some exercises that we went over. We taught Pip to focus. Remember when you're doing the focus that we want to start off with 1 second, 1 second. After a while, we're going to do 1 second, 20 seconds for that second movement. So it's going to take 20 seconds before we deliver the treat in the dog's mouth. Make sure the treat is being held between your face and the dog's face. The purpose of this exercise is to train the dog to look up at us on demand or on command. And so at first we do a 1 second, 1 second, then after a day or two, then we go 1 second, 2 seconds. And we gradually, progressively elongate that second movement until eventually the dog will stay looking at us in the face for 20 seconds. This is going to give the guardians the ability to redirect their dog, but also to use the technique that I went over with them off camera that I got from my mentor Karen London's book, Feisty Fido, which is basically to create a positive association with the dog, between your dog and other dogs that it sees. Another exercise I'd like the guardians to work on is teaching the dog to stay. Most people teach the dog to stay by saying stay, stay, stay. Each step you move away, stay. That's not teaching your dog to stay. What I do is I break it down into what I call the 3 Ds. The first D is duration. So we're going to ask the dog to sit right in front of us, ask it to stay for a couple seconds, pop the treat in its mouth, then go to a couple more seconds, pop the treat in its mouth. Keep repeating this process and keep on increasing the length of time that you ask the dog to stay. Remember, if the dog starts wiggling or moving around, then you need to, next time you practice it, start 1 or 2 seconds before the dog started to wiggle, and don't deliver a treat right after the dog wiggles or shifts, because it's going to think that the wiggle or shift is what got it the treat. Let's see what else. Make sure that each time that you want to keep on elongating the delay until you can get the dog to stay for 5 minutes where you're just right in front of him. The next, and make sure after each repetition, but when you complete the exercise, what I start out by doing is I toss a treat to the side a couple feet away so the dog has to get up to go get it. When it does, obviously don't say stay before that, when it gets up to go to it, we say the word break, release, whatever your word is that means we're done with the stay. Never use the word okay. It's a top 50 word in terms of commonality of usage, and I've heard a lot of people that accidentally put their on sit stay, somebody in conversation says okay, and then the dog bolts off. So make sure you use a distinctive word like release or break, are the 2 words I like to use. You could also use freedom. You can say red if you want, but I like to make the command words specific to the action. Okay, so we want to teach the dog to stay. Now for the stay and the focus exercise, these are really important that we practice these at least, each guardian needs to practice them at least once a day, every day, until the dog can consistently stay. For the 5 minutes. Same thing for the focus exercise to get to the 20 second delay, or 20 second of focus. Then you go to duration. I put the dog in a stay, I take 1 step back, count to 2, then come back and tell the dog to stay as I pop the treat in its mouth. And I generally start out with a formula. If I move 2 steps away, I wait 4 seconds. So the number of steps multiplied by 2 gives me the length of time that I'm going to wait. So we want to keep on doing that until we get the dog to stay when we move out of the room. And then you would want to practice this with distractions. Also, I'd like the guardians to start petting the dogs, feeding the dogs, sit buddy, after they eat first. And remember, if Pip doesn't eat all the food or walks away from the bowl, we're going to pick up the bowl, dump the empty food out of it. You're in my shop, buddy. You need to sit down. Sit. There we go. Sit. Passive training. Well, that's reinforcement. And then if the dog walks away, we pick up the bowl, dump it, and put the empty bowl back down. It's important to put the empty bowl back down. Otherwise, the dog looks at you as just simply taking away their food. What we want the dog to understand is when I give you permission to eat, you better eat, and I'm going to eat first because dogs eat in the order of their rank. Isn't that right, Calvin? That's right. So I'm about to head into a puppy class to teach dogs to heel. Remember, everything you do trains your dog, only sometimes you mean it.